It was a crisp evening on the Atlantic Voyager, a large cargo ship making its way across the vast Atlantic Ocean. The date was November 14, 2011, and the clock had just struck 11:45 p.m. The ship was on its usual course, sailing from the bustling ports of New York City toward the distant shores of Rotterdam. The night was unusually calm, with the moon hidden behind a veil of dark clouds, and the only sounds that could be heard were the soft creaking of the ship's structure and the gentle lapping of the ocean waves against its hull. Among the crew was the protagonist of this story, Alex Turner, a young and energetic deckhand, 24 years old, assigned to work the night shift. Alex had been aboard the Atlantic Voyager for nearly a year, handling basic deck duties and assisting in the ship's maintenance. Like most nights, the crew had settled into their routines. Most of them were below deck, resting for their shifts, while a few were scattered on the deck, keeping an eye on the ship's path and maintaining the equipment. Alex was finishing up his routine check on the upper deck, the stars barely visible in the night sky. The ship was silent, almost too silent, as he moved across the deck, glancing occasionally at the horizon, which was barely discernible in the dark expanse. Everything felt normal, almost peaceful. But little did he know, this night would be unlike any other. As he made his way toward the rear of the deck, the ship gave a sudden, violent lurch, so sudden and unexpected that Alex lost his footing and nearly stumbled. But before he could regain his balance, the world around him seemed to warp and twist. The next thing he knew, Alex was falling through the air, overboard, into the cold, unforgiving Atlantic waters below. He did not have time to scream, no time to grasp what had just happened. One moment, he was walking on the deck, and the next, he was drowning in darkness. The crew, unaware of Alex's sudden disappearance, continued their routines below deck. The night watchman, Mark Thompson, was inside the radio room, finishing his duties. The first mate, Lisa Martin, was in her quarters, reviewing logs. Not a single soul on board knew that Alex had just vanished, swallowed whole by the vast ocean in a matter of moments. The ship continued to sail, unaware of the loss. As Alex fought against the waves, panic surged through his veins. The icy cold water bit at his skin, and the crashing waves pushed him deeper into the darkness. He could barely see anything in the pitch black. The Atlantic Voyager was still moving ahead, its engines humming steadily, leaving him behind, alone, adrift in the cold Atlantic, with no idea of how or why this had happened. The questions began to form in Alex's mind. How did he end up overboard? What caused the ship to suddenly lurch, throwing him into the water without warning? Was this an accident, or something much darker at play? As the reality of his situation set in, Alex realized that the answers to these questions might be the difference between life and death. The most chilling question of all, was there something waiting for him in the depths of the ocean, something unseen, something that had caused this ship to act in a way that no one could explain? As Alex struggled to keep his head above water, gasping for air, he could feel the weight of the ocean pulling at him. His strength was fading, his limbs growing heavier with each passing second. His only source of sustenance, a single energy drink and a slice of bread he had grabbed from the ship's galley earlier, was now tucked tightly in his jacket. But would that be enough to keep him alive? How did Alex end up overboard? What caused the Atlantic Voyager to lurch so suddenly? If you want to uncover the terrifying answers to these questions, make sure to like and subscribe. The truth behind Alex's disappearance is hidden deep within the ocean, and the story has only just begun. The cold Atlantic waters pressed in on Alex, pulling him deeper with every passing second. He gasped for air, but the waves were relentless, and the freezing water soaked through his clothing. His body was already growing numb from the cold, and panic set in quickly. He had never imagined anything like this. One moment, he was walking on the deck, doing his rounds, and now he was alone in the middle of the ocean, far from the Atlantic Voyager, with no idea of how to survive. The ship, his lifeline, was nowhere in sight. He could no longer hear its engines, no longer see its lights cutting through the fog. It felt like an eternity, but Alex knew it had only been minutes since he had fallen overboard. His mind raced as he fought to stay afloat, the water churning violently around him. His only hope now was to keep himself alive long enough for the ship to notice his absence, but how long would that take? The energy drink he had grabbed earlier was still in his jacket pocket, but he had no way to open it. The bread was the only other thing he had, but it would not sustain him for long. In the vast, dark ocean, with no land in sight, he was alone. The question that kept echoing in his mind was how he had ended up here. He had not slipped. It had not been an accident. Something had caused him to fall overboard, but he could not grasp what that something was. His thoughts were interrupted by a sound. A faint hum, barely audible over the crashing waves. At first, Alex thought it might be his imagination, but the sound grew louder. It was distant but distinct, like the hum of a ship's engine, a constant, rhythmic beat. It was the sound of something approaching, but was it the Atlantic Voyager coming back for him, or was it something else? Alex's pulse quickened. He strained his eyes to look through the thick fog, but there was nothing, just an endless stretch of dark water surrounding him. No lights. No ships. Alex kicked his legs, trying to keep himself afloat. His body was exhausted. His breath was shallow, and his heart raced. He could feel his strength waning with every passing moment, and the ocean was slowly claiming him, its cold embrace pulling at him, dragging him down. He wondered how much longer he could last. How long could one man survive on nothing but a small drink and a slice of bread in the middle of the ocean? His thoughts were a blur. The silence of the ocean around him was suffocating. The only sounds were the distant crashing of waves and the rhythmic hum that seemed to be coming closer. He could not be sure, but the sound had a strange quality to it, almost as if it was not from a ship at all. The more he focused on it, the more it unsettled him. He could not explain it, but something about the sound felt wrong. A new sense of urgency gripped him. His mind told him to keep moving, to keep fighting, but his body was exhausted. He tried to stay focused, but his eyes were growing heavy. His head was swimming with the cold, the fear, and the confusion. The only thing he had left was his will to survive, and that, too, was fading. Just as he thought he could no longer stay afloat, the hum grew louder. It was unmistakable now. Something was out there. Was it the Atlantic Voyager coming back for him, or was it something else in the ocean that had been drawn to his struggle for survival? The thought of what could be lurking beneath the surface of the water sent a chill down his spine. His gaze shifted to the dark abyss around him, but there was nothing to see. The ocean was vast, empty, and silent. Yet, that humming sound, that persistent hum, continued to grow louder. Was it a rescue ship? Or was it something far more terrifying, something that had been waiting for him in the depths? Was the sound of the ship approaching truly a rescue, or was it something far worse? What is lurking beneath the surface of the ocean, and why does Alex feel as if something is watching him? The ocean stretched endlessly around Alex. The water was cold, and every wave that hit him seemed to drain the little energy he had left. His clothes clung to his body, wet and heavy, and the salt water stung his eyes. He tried to stay calm, but panic kept creeping in. His breathing was shallow, and each movement felt like a struggle against the current pulling him deeper. The ship, the Atlantic Voyager, had disappeared from view, and now he was alone, truly alone, on an endless expanse of water. For the first few minutes after falling overboard, Alex had tried to fight the waves, attempting to stay afloat, but the reality of the situation was settling in. He had no idea how far the ship had gone, or if anyone had even noticed his absence. The thought of his crewmates continuing with their duties below deck while he was left alone in the middle of the ocean made him feel even more isolated. His only possessions, a half-empty energy drink and a slice of bread he had grabbed earlier, were now little more than an afterthought. They would not sustain him for long. As the minutes turned into hours, Alex began to understand just how dire his situation was. The water, though calm now, was still mercilessly cold. The darkness around him seemed to grow thicker, the quiet broken only by the occasional slap of the waves against his face. He tried to focus, tried to tell himself that he could survive, but each passing minute chipped away at his resolve. He was drifting further from the ship, and the chance of being spotted was growing slimmer by the second. Despite his fear, Alex tried to think logically. He had always been told that staying calm was the key to survival, but it was hard to hold on to that advice when everything seemed so hopeless. He rationed his food as best as he could, breaking the slice of bread into tiny pieces and saving the last bit of his energy drink for later. He could feel his body weakening, his muscles cramping from the cold and the strain of staying afloat. The waves began to pick up again, and Alex fought to keep his head above water, but it was becoming harder with every wave. The sounds of the ocean, the crashing waves, the lapping water, all blended together in a constant, overwhelming noise. His mind started to wander, and he began to wonder if this would be how he would die. Alone in the Atlantic, with no one around to help, no one to hear him. Would anyone ever know what happened to him? Would the ship even notice his absence? The thought gnawed at him. Just as despair threatened to overtake him, he saw something in the distance, a shape, just beyond the reach of the fog. For a moment, he thought it was a trick of the mind, but then it became clearer. There was something out there, moving toward him. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be the Atlantic Voyager, returning to search for him? Or was it something else entirely? The sight of the shape, no matter how faint, gave him a glimmer of hope. It was the only thing he had to cling to now. He started waving his arms, shouting as loudly as he could, but the sound was lost in the vastness of the ocean. The shape grew closer, but it was hard to tell if it was real or just another illusion brought on by hunger and exhaustion. The shape grew clearer still, but the more Alex stared, the more the fear crept in. It was not a ship. It was too large to be a ship, too unnatural. His thoughts raced, but the waves crashed against him with increasing force. He could no longer tell if it was moving toward him or if he was drifting closer to it. Was it real? Or was it a hallucination brought on by dehydration? Despite his growing fear, Alex could not stop looking at it. He had no choice but to hope that it was a ship, hope that it was a rescue, hope that he would not die alone in the vast ocean. What was the shape in the distance? Could Alex's hopes for rescue be shattered? The shape in the distance grew larger as Alex strained his eyes to see what it was. He had to hold on. He had to survive, and for the first time in what felt like hours, there was a flicker of hope. The shape was no longer a vague outline, it was becoming clearer, though the waves made it difficult to discern exactly what it was. Was it a ship? Could it be a rescue? Alex's heart raced as he waved his arms, shouting, but the sound was lost to the vast, empty ocean around him. His voice cracked from the dry air in his throat, but he kept shouting. He did not know how much longer he could keep going. His limbs were exhausted from treading water, and the hunger gnawed at him. His body felt like it was giving up, but the shape ahead kept him clinging to the last remnants of his hope. The shape was now closer. He could see it more clearly. But it was not a ship, not anything he recognized. It was large, dark, and it moved in a strange, almost unnatural way. There were no lights on it, no sign of life. It was more like a shadow moving across the water, blending with the darkness around it. The waves crashed around him as he struggled to stay afloat. The shape was getting closer now, and Alex's pulse quickened. Was it a boat, a ship? Or something else? He had been stranded in the ocean for what felt like days, and the idea of rescue was becoming an obsession. But now, with this shape approaching, Alex could not decide if he should feel relief or fear. He had no idea what he was about to face. He tried to swim toward it, but his strength was slipping away. Every stroke felt heavier, every movement slower than the last. The cold water was sapping his energy, and he could feel the darkness pressing in from all sides. The shape was now unmistakable, it was not a ship at all. It was some sort of large, dark figure, something that should not be in the ocean, moving silently just below the surface. Alex could see its form shifting beneath the water, a massive silhouette moving steadily toward him. He tried to scream, but no sound escaped his lips. His voice was gone, swallowed by the vast ocean. Panic surged within him. He had no idea what this was, but he knew it was not friendly. The strange, dark form moved closer, and Alex's heart hammered in his chest. Was it a predator? Was it something from the depths of the ocean that had come for him? Or was it something else entirely, something more terrifying than he could imagine? Every instinct told him to get away, to swim toward the faint hope of rescue, but his body was no longer cooperating. The waves were pushing him, the cold was freezing him, and the shape beneath the water seemed to be moving with a purpose. It was as if it knew exactly where he was, knew exactly what he had been through. And now it was coming for him. The water around him seemed to darken even more, and the shape beneath the surface became clearer. It was enormous, more massive than anything Alex had ever seen, its form shifting in the water with an eerie fluidity. His chest tightened in fear, and he tried to swim faster, but the ocean seemed to mock him, pushing him in every direction but the one he needed to go. The shape was now so close that Alex could see the waves disturbed by its movement, but it was still too dark to make out any details. It was not a ship, not a boat, and it was certainly not something that belonged in the ocean. Alex was trapped in the water, and the thing below him was coming for him. The water, the fog, the silence, they were all closing in. He could not escape. His mind raced, trying to think of a way out, but there was no way out. The creature, whatever it was closing in, and Alex could feel his body growing weaker with each passing second. What is the shape in the water? Is it a creature, or something else that Alex cannot understand? To uncover the answers and discover the truth, make sure to like and subscribe. The next part will reveal the answers that Alex desperately needs to survive. The cold water was draining what little strength Alex had left. Every minute felt longer than the last as he struggled to stay afloat. His body ached from the chill, and the salt water stung his skin. The waves were becoming stronger now, and the steady rhythm that had once been calming was now an unpredictable force, pushing him in every direction. The ocean, vast and indifferent, seemed endless, and Alex began to wonder how long he could keep going. The Atlantic Voyager was gone, he had lost sight of the ship hours ago. The fog had swallowed it whole, and now there was nothing left but him, adrift in an ocean that stretched beyond what he could see. His heart was racing, not from exertion anymore, but from the isolation. The longer he was alone, the more the silence of the ocean seemed to press down on him. He had only the energy drink and a slice of bread, both now distant memories, to help him survive. His throat was dry, his stomach empty, and his thoughts were clouded by the desperation creeping in. He couldn't help but feel as if something was wrong. It wasn't just the hunger or the thirst, it was the stillness. There was a sense that the ocean wasn't just calm, it was unnaturally so, as if something beneath the surface was waiting. Alex tried to focus on staying afloat, but his body was fighting him. His arms were weak, and his legs were cramping. Every wave that came pushed him down further into the water, and he had to fight to pull himself back up. The more Alex struggled, the more he realized just how small and helpless he was in the face of the ocean. The waves were relentless, and no matter how hard he tried, he could not seem to make any progress. He wasn't moving toward safety. He was just moving with the current, wherever it took him. Then, just as his thoughts began to spiral, he noticed something. A dark shape moving beneath the water. It was subtle at first, just a shift in the shadows, but it caught his attention. Alex froze. It wasn't the gentle movement of the waves. It was deliberate, purposeful. He could feel his heart beat faster. It was as if the ocean itself was alive, responding to his movements, pulling him toward something. He tried to look, to focus on whatever was beneath him, but the darkness of the water made it impossible to see. Whatever it was moving closer. His mind raced with questions. What was it? The ocean had never felt this way before. It had always been a vast, quiet expanse. Now, it felt alive. Was it a creature? Was something beneath the surface watching him, waiting? Or was it just his mind playing tricks on him, worn down by the cold and exhaustion? Alex tried to shake the thought away. He needed to survive, and he couldn't afford to waste energy on fear. He had to focus. The light, he had seen something. A faint glimmer through the fog. It was so distant, but it was enough. It gave him a brief flicker of hope, a reminder that he was not completely alone in the world. He couldn't tell if it was a ship or something else, but he had to try. With what little strength he had left, he started swimming toward it, kicking his legs, trying to move in the direction of the light. The ocean was still pulling him in every direction, but he forced himself to focus on the faint glow in the distance. As he swam, he could feel the cold seeping deeper into his bones, his muscles tightening with every stroke. His breaths were shallow, and he could hear the waves crashing around him. He kept his eyes fixed on the light, pushing himself forward, even though each movement felt heavier than the last. The light was closer now, but so was the sinking feeling that the distance was too great. He was exhausted, and he could feel his body beginning to give out. Was it a ship, or was it something else? Was this his last chance at survival, or was it just another illusion, another hope that the ocean would soon take from him? What was the light that Alex saw? Was it a ship, or was it something more dangerous waiting for him? Alex's muscles screamed with exhaustion as he swam, his body barely responding to his commands. The water around him was freezing, and every wave felt as if it was trying to pull him back under. He kept his eyes fixed on the light in the distance, the only thing that offered any hope. It flickered in the dark, moving just beyond his reach, but it was something to hold on to, something that kept him going. The light was strange. It did not behave like any ship's light he had seen before. It swayed gently, almost like a candle flame caught in the wind, but there was no wind on the ocean. It seemed alive, shifting, pulling him forward as if it knew he was there. His heart raced faster as he pushed through the cold water, determined to reach it, but the more he swam, the further it seemed to move. It was maddening, like the ocean itself was teasing him. His body was weakening. Every stroke felt heavier, and the cold seeped deeper into his bones. He could feel his strength slipping away with each passing second, but he refused to stop. The light ahead was his only chance. The ocean had already taken so much from him, he could not let it take his hope too. As Alex swam, the light grew brighter, but it remained elusive, moving further away the closer he got. He reached out, his fingers brushing the water where it had been, but it was gone again, just out of reach. The waves continued to crash around him, louder now, as if the sea itself was rising in anger. He stopped for a moment to catch his breath, floating in the water. The light was still there, flickering in the distance. Was it really there? Or had his mind begun to deceive him after all the hours of isolation and hunger? He felt a wave of doubt wash over him, but he could not afford to give in to it. The ocean was vast and endless, and he was so small, but that light, it had to mean something. Alex began swimming again, his body moving slower now, but his determination unwavering. The light was still there, and he had to reach it. Each stroke was a struggle, but he had no other choice. He could not let himself sink into despair. What is the source of the light? Is it a sign of rescue, or is it drawing Alex towards something even darker? Alex's body was growing weaker with every passing second, yet he continued to swim, focused on the light ahead. The ocean was growing colder, the waves larger, as if trying to pull him under. His muscles burned with exhaustion, and each stroke felt like it took everything he had left. The faint light in the distance was now his only tether to reality, and it was both a source of hope and uncertainty. His mind was clouded, the confusion from dehydration and hunger taking its toll, but he kept going, driven by the desperate need to survive. As he swam, he could feel the waves growing stronger, each one crashing against him, pushing him back, testing his resolve. His breaths were shallow, and his chest was tight from the effort, but the light continued to pull him forward. It was strange, almost hypnotic. The more he looked at it, the more he felt as if it was guiding him, as if it had a purpose. But with every passing second, doubt crept in. The closer he got, the more unsure he became. It was not like any light he had seen before. It did not act like a ship's light or the glow of a lighthouse. It flickered, moved in strange ways, and for a moment, Alex wondered if it was even real. He forced himself to focus, to push aside the fear creeping into his thoughts. He had to reach it. There was nothing else. It had to be a sign that someone was out there, that rescue was possible. His mind flashed back to the Atlantic Voyager and the crew, wondering if anyone even realized he was missing, wondering how long they would search for him before it was too late. He had no answers. All he had was the light and the ocean. The vast, endless ocean. As Alex swam, the light grew larger, but something began to change. It was no longer moving away, but it did not feel like it was moving closer either. It simply stayed there, flickering, hanging in the air. He could no longer tell if it was real or just his mind playing tricks on him. His thoughts were racing. Was this truly his salvation, or was it something else entirely, something meant to lure him deeper into the unknown? The waves crashed harder now, the sound of the water becoming louder, almost deafening. The cold was biting, his limbs numb from the freezing water, but he pushed forward, his mind fixated on the light. It seemed to be floating just above the surface, and as he reached out toward it, it began to flicker more violently, like it was pulsing, as if it were alive. Alex stopped, suspended in the water, his heart racing as he tried to make sense of what was happening. The light seemed to be waiting for him, but he could not bring himself to reach out any further. His body was exhausted, his mind clouded by hunger, thirst, and fear, but the pull of the light kept him focused. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. The waves no longer seemed to matter, the cold was forgotten. All that existed was the light and the struggle to reach it. But as he extended his hand, the light flickered one final time, and Alex felt something shift beneath him. The water around him grew darker, colder, as if the ocean itself had changed. The light was no longer a beacon, it was something else, something he could not understand. What is the light Alex is chasing? Is it truly a sign of hope, or has the ocean tricked him into something far more dangerous? To uncover the answers to these questions and follow Alex's journey, make sure to like and subscribe. The truth will soon be revealed. Alex could barely keep his head above the water. Every movement felt heavier than the last. The cold had long since settled deep into his bones, and exhaustion had taken hold of him completely. His arms, once strong and steady, now trembled from the effort of staying afloat. The faint hope he had clung to when he saw the distant light was now gone, swallowed by the endless, cold ocean around him. There was nothing left, no light, no sign of the ship, only the dark void of the sea stretching out in every direction. The waves, which had seemed so distant earlier, now crashed violently around him, battering his fragile body. His breathing had become shallow, each breath a struggle as his body screamed for rest. But he couldn't stop. If he stopped, the ocean would take him. It was that simple. His thoughts raced, but there was no clarity. The fear that had initially surged within him now settled into something deeper, resignation. The thought of being lost forever in this vast, indifferent ocean weighed heavily on his chest. No one had seen him fall. No one knew where he was. The Atlantic Voyager was a distant memory, fading further with every passing second. He was alone. But just as his mind began to wander, something shifted beneath him. The water grew colder, sharper, and Alex felt something stir beneath the surface. He froze, his body instinctively tensing. A dark shape moved below him, larger than any fish, its form shifting in the darkness of the deep. His heart pounded as he stared into the black abyss, wondering if it was real or just his mind playing tricks, pushed to the edge by hunger, cold, and fear. The water rippled around him, and for a split second, the shape below him surfaced, just enough to send a wave crashing over him. Alex gasped, choking on the salt water, but the shape was gone, vanishing into the depths as quickly as it had appeared. His body was already too weak to react, too slow to move. He could only hold on to the fleeting thought that something in the ocean had noticed him, something was out there. Alex fought to steady his breathing. It could have been a shark, or perhaps just the movement of the current. But that shape, that brief, unsettling glimpse, had left an imprint on his mind. Something was down there, watching him. The ocean had always been vast, but now it felt alive, pulling at him in ways he could not understand. The quiet that had once been comforting was now oppressive. The vastness of the ocean seemed to press in on him, suffocating him with its silence. The hum that had resonated in the water earlier returned, low and steady, vibrating through his body, making him feel as though the ocean itself was alive, and it had been waiting for him. His muscles burned with each stroke, but he kept swimming, even though his body begged him to stop. He had to move. He had to get to something, anything. But in the distance, there was no sign of rescue. The waves continued to pound him, the light he had hoped for now completely gone. He wondered if he had imagined it all. Perhaps it had been his mind, desperate for hope, trying to hold on to something that was never there. As the exhaustion began to cloud his mind, Alex's thoughts were interrupted by a splash close by. He turned instinctively, his heart racing, but there was nothing. Just the endless ocean and the darkness surrounding him. It was then that the realization hit him: he was not alone. The ocean had its own rhythm, its own life, and he was just another part of it. The question now was not whether he could escape, but how long he could survive. What was the shape Alex saw beneath the water? Has the ocean become something far more dangerous than Alex anticipated? The ocean had never felt so vast, so unyielding. Alex's muscles were cramping, and his breath was ragged. Each stroke was slower than the last, and the cold water was no longer just a physical presence, it was part of him, seeping into his bones. The dark shape beneath the surface, the one that had haunted him for hours, had disappeared again, but Alex could still feel it. Its presence was a weight on his chest, a constant reminder that he was no longer in control. His thoughts drifted, his mind clouded with exhaustion and fear. The Atlantic Voyager was far gone, and with it, any sense of safety. The light he had seen earlier was no more than a distant dream, fading into the fog. He had nothing left but the endless ocean and the whispers of what might lie beneath. The waves had calmed slightly, but the water still felt like a trap, pulling him deeper, keeping him trapped in its grip. Alex had never been this scared in his life. He had survived storms, sickness, and even close calls with the ship, but this was different. This was an isolation unlike anything he had ever known. No one was coming. He had to accept that. No ship would pass, no rescue was on its way. He was completely alone in the vast expanse of water. But then, just as the thought of giving up started to settle into his chest, something unexpected happened. In the distance, a faint, almost imperceptible light appeared. Alex squinted against the horizon, wondering if his tired eyes were deceiving him. But no. It was there. A ship. The faint glimmer of its lights cutting through the fog. His heart leapt in his chest. Could it be the Atlantic Voyager, back to find him? Or was it another vessel, one that had been drawn by his struggle? For a brief moment, everything else fell away. The exhaustion, the cold, the terror, all of it faded, replaced by a single thought: survival. Alex's body, though drained, surged with energy as he swam toward the light. The water was still cold, but now, it no longer felt like a force against him. It felt like a path that would lead him to safety. His arms moved more fluidly now, each stroke a little faster, a little stronger, as if the very idea of rescue had revived him. The light grew larger, brighter, and Alex could see it now, definitely a ship. His body, worn and battered from hours in the water, could barely hold on. But the hope of being saved pushed him forward. He forced himself to swim, to fight, even when his body felt like it could give no more. He knew he could not stop. He had come too far. The distance between him and the ship was narrowing, but with every stroke, the ocean seemed to fight back harder, trying to pull him down, drag him back into the depths. Finally, just when Alex thought he could not make it any longer, the ship's silhouette emerged from the mist. It was a large vessel, moving steadily through the water. Alex's heart beat faster. He was not imagining it. This was real. He was not alone anymore. The ship was approaching, and for the first time in hours, Alex allowed himself to believe that there was a way out of this nightmare. But as the ship drew nearer, Alex's body refused to cooperate. The weight of the ocean, the strain of the last few hours, was too much. His limbs were numb, his vision blurry, and he struggled to keep his head above water. But just as his strength began to falter, the ship slowed, and a figure appeared on the deck. Alex wanted to shout, to wave his arms, but his voice was gone. His body was barely responding, but he reached out with whatever strength remained. The figure on the deck of the ship saw him, and within moments, a rope was thrown toward him. His eyes were too heavy to focus, but he reached for the rope, his hand trembling. With the last of his strength, he grasped the rope, and with a pull, he was lifted from the water, his body dragged aboard the ship. He collapsed onto the deck, gasping for breath, his body shaking with the cold. The crew members who had helped pull him aboard were silent, their faces grim, but they had done it. They had rescued him. But as Alex lay there, drenched and exhausted, he could not shake the feeling that something was not right. The ship that had rescued him was not the Atlantic Voyager. It was different, much older, with a strange, worn-out appearance. The crew, too, seemed odd, silent, distant. It was as if they had been waiting for him, watching him. The captain approached him, his face shadowed in the dim light. He did not say anything at first, but Alex could feel the tension in the air. He had been rescued, yes, but something about this ship, about the crew, felt wrong. Alex wanted to ask questions, to demand answers, but his voice was weak, and the exhaustion was overwhelming. He could feel himself slipping into unconsciousness, but he had one last thought as he closed his eyes: what kind of ship was this? What kind of ship has rescued Alex? Why does the crew seem so strange, so distant? Alex's head spun as he lay there on the deck, shivering, his body finally pulled from the cold embrace of the ocean. The crew, who had rescued him, stood around him, their expressions unreadable, their movements almost mechanical. They were silent, but Alex could feel their eyes on him. They were waiting, watching, but not with the relief of rescuers. They were watching him as if they had been expecting him, anticipating this moment. As Alex regained his senses, his exhaustion slowly giving way to clarity, he tried to sit up, but his body protested, aching from the hours in the cold water. The ship he was on, this ship, was nothing like the Atlantic Voyager. It had an old, worn look, as if it had been through countless storms. The wood of the deck creaked beneath him, and the sails looked tattered, but there was something more. There was something unsettling about it. The crew, too, looked strange. They moved with an almost eerie calm, their faces hidden beneath the shadows of their hoods. None of them spoke to Alex, and that silence only added to the tension in the air. He tried to push himself up again, his gaze scanning the ship. The captain approached him then, a figure tall and imposing, his face shadowed beneath the brim of his cap. He did not speak for a long moment, just stood there, watching Alex with an intensity that made Alex uncomfortable. Finally, the captain spoke, his voice low and calm, but with an undertone of something Alex could not place. "You were lost at sea. You've been through the trial. You've survived." Alex blinked, trying to make sense of the words. "The trial? What trial?" His voice was hoarse from dehydration, but the question burned in his mind. He had no memory of any trial, no understanding of what the captain meant. The last thing he remembered was the Atlantic Voyager, his ship, his crew, then the fall, and the ocean. And now, here he was, on a ship he did not recognize, surrounded by a crew he could not understand. "The ocean claims many," the captain continued, his tone heavy with something Alex could not identify. "But not all are lost. Not all are forgotten. We wait. We find those who have been chosen. You were chosen." Alex's heart skipped a beat. Chosen? What was this man talking about? His mind raced. What did the captain mean by chosen? He had not been chosen for anything. He had fallen overboard, just another accident, another lost soul in the vast ocean. But now, there was no way to deny it. The ship, the crew, and the way they spoke, it all seemed too orchestrated, too deliberate. This was not a regular rescue. This was something else. Chosen for what? Alex asked, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and confusion. The captain's eyes narrowed as he looked at Alex. You will know soon enough. But first, you must understand. The ocean is a place of trial. Some are pulled in, never to return. Others are given a chance to prove themselves. You survived. That means you are meant to join us. A cold chill ran down Alex's spine. Join us? What did that mean? Who were these people? What kind of ship was this? Before he could speak again, the captain turned and gestured for Alex to follow him. They walked through the ship, the crew watching them, their expressions blank. As they reached the rear of the ship, the captain stopped and pointed toward the horizon. Alex's eyes widened as he looked at what the captain was showing him. In the distance, he could see the faint outline of another ship, a ship that looked like the Atlantic Voyager. It was sailing away, slowly disappearing into the horizon. The captain turned to Alex, his gaze steady. The Atlantic Voyager, the one you thought lost. It was never meant to be found. And you were never meant to be lost. But now, you have found us. Welcome to your new fate. Alex's mind reeled as the words sank in. The Atlantic Voyager was never meant to be found. He had fallen into the ocean, and everything that followed, his isolation, his struggle for survival, had been part of something else. He was not just a survivor, he was part of a much larger story. He had been chosen, yes, but chosen for what? To join a crew that was as much a part of the ocean as the waves themselves. The captain stepped closer, his voice lowering to a whisper. The ocean takes, but it also gives. You were given a chance to return. Now, you must join us, or be left behind. The ocean waits for no one. Alex stared at the disappearing Atlantic Voyager, a flood of emotions surging through him. He had survived, but at what cost? What had he truly escaped? The crew, the ship, everything about this place was foreign to him, yet it felt strangely familiar, as if he had been brought here for a reason. As the ship sailed toward its destination, Alex stood at the bow, watching the horizon, the distant waters stretching far beyond what he could comprehend. The answers he had sought were now within his grasp, but the deeper truths of the ocean remained hidden, waiting to be uncovered. If you have followed Alex's journey this far, then this story deserves your precious like and subscribe. Your support helps me bring more stories to life. Let me know where you are watching from. I truly appreciate your engagement with this journey. The ocean's secrets have been revealed, but who knows what other mysteries await. Stay tuned for more.